How you doing, John?
Doing well, thanks. Mr. Wessel, we got everybody here. Are we ready? Chris, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm just checking to see if we got enough. 4, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, it appears like we've got eight members just by a quick straw poll there, a visual poll there. So,
All righty then. I'm showing 1:30. So I will call to order the meeting of the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission for May 5th, 2021. May I have a roll call, please?
Michael Widmer.
Present.
Michael Drinkwater.
Here.
John Enlow.
Here.
John Flansburgh. Bill Hauk.
Here.
Mickey Hazelwood.
Here.
Danielle Henderson. Here. John Martini.
Here.
John Combs.
Here.
Dave Solero.
Here.
Mervyn Wright.
Here.
John Zimmerman.
Here.
Harry Fonstock. Mylyn Nugayan. Ron Penrose. Thomas Payette. Cindy Churchek. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 2, public comments. Anyone wishing to make public comments will have 3 minutes. Jen, do we have anybody out in Zoom land wishing to make comments?
Michael DiMartini submitted a request to possibly talk on any action item, and he's in the meeting.
I have no comment on this item. Thank you.
All right. Hearing no other comments, we'll move on to agenda item number 3, approval of today's agenda. May I have a motion, please?
So Solero move to approve.
Flansburgh, second. Got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I had requested the right to have comments on any action item, of which this is, I believe, Michael DiMartini speaking.
Did you wish to speak with regard to approval of the agenda?
Yes,
Please do so.
thank you. My comment here is that I think with regards to public outreach on the items that are being presented on the agenda, that there should be more of an attempt to reach out to the public with regards to the goings on of this process of amending the plans. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Jen, do we have any other public comment on that item?
We do not.
Thank you. Now I'll move on to action item agenda item number 4, approval of the minutes from the March 17th and April 7th, 2021 meetings. Jen, do we have any public comment on this issue?
Not unless Mr. DiMartini has one.
All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second, Zimmerman.
Mike, Mr. Drinkwater, for clarity, are you approving minutes from both meetings or are you taking them separately?
No, those, I meant that as a, to take them together. Sorry.
Thank you for the clarification. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Move on to agenda item number 5, discussion, action, and possible recommendation to the to the Western Region Water Commission on a proposed regional wastewater source control plan. I think that's why Mr. Padilla is here today. Krishna, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here, Chair Martini.
I say, with that, Dr. McGila is here today to propose on that particular item and for the Nevada Water Innovation Institute. And the proposed work is focused upon reducing pollutants to enhance and possibly expand the opportunities for use of wastewater in existing future water recycling projects. So, Dr. Begila, you might as well take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Vessel. For the record, my name is Krishna Pagila. I'm the director of the Nevada Water Innovation Institute. Chair Martini and commissioners, as you know, the Nevada Water Innovation Institute was created to address regional issues and provide a platform for the agencies to come together. And the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission and Western Regional Water Commission has funded several regional initiatives which the Nevada Water Innovation Institute conducted. This proposal is to look at source control as a means to enable the water reclamation facilities in the region to achieve effluent limits in a much better way, rather than finding end-of-the-pipe solutions of treatment technologies, as well as the upcoming challenges with meeting some of the regulatory and non-regulatory limits on pollutants in water reuse application, whether it is potable or non-potable. The ability to identify sources of these pollutants will allow us to manage both the treatment technologies we employ as well as take source control measures to minimize the entry of these pollutants. So the project that is being proposed is phase one of the regional scope, which is looking at all the 5 water reclamation facilities and their inputs and the sources of those inputs, and also whatever regulatory developments are taking place. For example, you might have heard that perfluorinated substances which are present in wastewater are likely to be regulated, and it's a major issue because that would add a tremendous amount of infrastructure and operating costs to remove those if those are to be regulated down to the levels that are being anticipated. So the goal of this project is to look at a source control framework for each of the facilities by meeting with each of the agencies as well as regulatory issues, and then develop a plan to conduct the actual sampling and monitoring, which allows us to do source control, before we envision any treatment-related solutions. So with that, I'm going to stop here, and we are requesting funding of $170,000 for the next fiscal year to support a postdoctoral researcher and a student assistant, and some of Mr. Warner's time, who would be facilitating with the entities involved for the 5 facilities. So with that, I'm going to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Krishna. Any questions from the commission?
This is John Enlow. No question, just a comment, Krishna. Totally support this concept. Great idea, very timely. I just wanted to make you aware of a document that I became aware of today. You may already know of it, but the National Water Research Institute has a source control guidance document used for indirect and direct potable reuse that was just recently published. So I think that would be a good document to review too.
Thank you for that comment, John. Yes, I am aware of that document. We will definitely use that for from a reuse point of view as a guidance for us to look at site-specific conditions and opportunities that we might be able to take into consideration.
Any other comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is Mervyn Wright. Just another comment. The Premier Lake Paiute tribe certainly is at the downstream end of the Truckee River system, and we're particularly interested in observing and watching what's going on in the North Valleys, in the Spanish Springs area, and in some of the drainages out toward Palomino Valley and Winnemucca Ranch area. And certainly appreciate the the presentation, the proposal that you have included. Our concern has always been, to be mindful of the effluent and the discharges at the reclamation facility there at Vista. And we're particularly interested in looking at the bullet point where you include the Truckee Meadows Wastewater Reclamation Facility. I'm assuming that's the Vista plant. And so, whenever we're looking at reuse of effluent, certainly we're, and I have to just say that, when I make this comment as a downstream user, under the Ordish decree and the agriculture entitlements that exist downstream of Truckee Meadows, both the folks out in Lahontan Valley as well as, down on the Pyramid Lake Reservation, whenever effluent is being removed from the river, we certainly want to see that the river stays whole just to satisfy those water right entitlements that are downstream. And so certainly looking forward to seeing this work proceed forward. And as Mr. Enlow indicated, I too, share in support of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wright. Mr. Drinkwater, I believe you had your hand up.
I did, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to reinforce something that Dr. Pagilla said. The end of the pipe treatment at the plant is the most expensive way to deal with the problem. I think as we move forward and we see new regulations, particularly the fluoridated compound issue, those compounds are going to be regulated at a national or state level someday soon. So I think it is prudent for us to investigate alternative ways to deal with those pollutants. So source control is obviously one of the tools in the toolbox. And with that, I'd like to make a motion unless others would like to comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Drinkwater. Any further comments? All right, Mr. Drinkwater, entertain a motion. Wait, hang on before we get to a motion.
Oh, you're right.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Michael DiMartini. I just want to make a quick comment on this item, which is in line with my other comment, and that is public outreach. I certainly have always been for spending considerable money regarding this type of approach to treating the wastewater. However, the cost is something that still has to be determined. And the public, we're going down a road where the public needs to be apprised of what the impacts may be of this type of procedure. How much nominally is it going to cost to each and every person, number one. Number two, what's going to happen with regards to the TDS that's not proposed to be treated, as I understand? And how is that going to affect, in particular, any of the North Valleys? And what things are going to be done to mitigate the long-term effect of the TDS being brought into these valleys? That's the very reason the plan is being implemented, is to try to keep the TDS out of the river. But taking the water to the North Valleys is not necessarily that solution. So I'm concerned about the public outreach. I don't believe the public has been put on notice adequately with regards to the Class A plus water and how it may impact them either physically or mentally. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jan, is there any other public comment on this item?
I have none.
Thank you. Mr. Drinkwater, I'll bring it back to you for a motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we recommend to the Western Regional Water Commission they approve the Regional Wastewater Source Control Plan Development Phase 1 as presented here today.
Thank you, Michael. Do I have a second?
Second.
I didn't catch who that was.
That was Bill Hauk.
Thank you, Commissioner Hauk. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Krishna, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Chair Martini and Commissioners.
All right, we'll move on to item number 6, discussion, action, and possible recommendations to the Western Region Water Commission on amendments to resolution number 5 and facility conformance review procedures under Section 51 of the Act. Possible direction to staff. I'm showing Mr. Rhodes will be presenting today.
Mr. Chair, before Mr. Rhodes begins, just a disclosure for the record, again, same as last month. Our firm is involved in some litigation involving a challenge to a tentative map approval by the City of Reno. Some of the issues that are involved in that litigation question whether the City of Reno appropriately considered conformance review procedures. So out of excess of caution, our firm has recused itself. I ask Mr. Rhodes to step in on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Pawnee. Mr. Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see Mr. Smitherman is with us. Jim, would you like to tee it up, or do you want me to jump right in?
Well, I'll walk through the changes briefly, and then, John, you can go ahead and fill in as need be. Does that sound okay?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Good to be with you again virtually. The changes that John and I are bringing to you today are fairly straightforward in response to your comments last meeting. So they affect Section 2 and Section 4 of the proposed facility conformance review procedures. In Section 2, we added the phrase "and shall include but are not limited to," referring to the list A through I of the facilities that may be of a kind or size as to affect the working of the plan. I'm getting some funny feedback in my ears. Am I coming through clearly?
I'm getting a little feedback too, Jim.
Okay.
Maybe we could ask people to mute themselves, make it a lot easier if you're not talking. Thank you.
Do I need to restate, or was it clear enough?
I think it was pretty clear, Jim. We could hear you, I think.
Okay. Okay, so I'll move on to the next revision, which is Section 4. So, and that one had more to do with timing and process. And so John broke out Section 4 into subsection A and B. In subsection A, we just inserted that staff will then conduct a review, and after receipt of the complete proposal for a major facility listed in Section 2, which is the list, make an initial determination as to conformance, and then set a meeting date for conformance review by this commission. And then in B, I'll just read, if a proposed facility is not listed in Section 2, but may, in staff's best judgment, be a major regional facility of such a kind or size as to affect the working of the plan, staff will submit a complete proposal to the commission for a final determination as to whether or not conformance review is required. And then if the commission determines that conformance review is required, they shall proceed forthwith at the same meeting at which the determination for conformance review is made to review and consider the proposal as provided in Section 5 below. And so what we've, to sum up, what we're proposing is that once staff gets a complete proposal for a major or regional facility, that staff conducts the review, brings it to the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission at a meeting date that they would set, and then at that same meeting be prepared to conduct a conformance review. So that would be, I think, the most expedient and best use of time. And then the final revisions, I think that it just has to do with if there's a notice of appeal, it has to be in writing, and that the 30-day clock would start at the public meeting where staff presents the complete proposal to the NNWPC. So that's all I have, at least at this pass. So John, if you need to fill in any of the gaps or bring it back to the commission, please feel free.
I think that's a good, concise summary of the changes that we made in response to the directions of staff that we received at the last meeting. So I would open it up to questions from or comments from the commissioners at this point.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? All right, Jen, do we have public hearing on this item?
We have an email that I forwarded to you to be entered into record from Mr. DeMartini, and I don't know if he also wants to say something on this item.
Mr. DiMartini, do you wish to make comment on agenda item 6?
I do, and thank you.
You'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, I asked for a little more time on this because to start with, I did not send an email regarding this item. I merely requested to speak.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. The email came from Matthew DiMartini.
I saw that. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Drinkwater.
So can I take my turn after you get done with his?
I called for discussion. We are in opening public comment right now, Mr. Martini, and you're on the clock.
Okay, so I'm starting now then. And with regards to that, I'm a little concerned about the far-reaching effect of the proposed amendment in that it's essentially allowing almost everything known to man to be constructed without a conformance review in this county. 5 million gallons a day is 8 times what the allowance was for not having a conformance review. There's also a concern about Mr. Ponyi, now that he has admitted some type of issue, that he was involved in the original creation of the list that's before you now. And I'm a little uncomfortable in the basis for the original list that was modified in a couple prior meetings ago. Additionally, there seems to be a moving target a little bit for a person that falls within the list, whatever the list is. How would that person know to submit his project? The way I'm reading it, one would not submit their project if they felt it was below the 4,000 acre feet or some other number or 5 million gallons a day. They just wouldn't submit anything. And yet there would be some moving target where the public might come in later and try to claim that it should have required a conformance review. So that wouldn't be fair to anybody. So thank you very much. I think some of these issues should be looked at in more detail before there's any action on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DiMartini. I'll bring it back to the commission now for discussion. Is there any discussion with regard to this item? Hearing none and seeing none, I will
sorry, this is Matthew DiMartini. We were instructed before to just be on.
Matthew, I'm sorry. Did you wish to speak as well, or was your email enough?
Well, my email, I'd really like to see it get posted on the website with some of the other meeting materials. I kind of understood that was happening before. Otherwise, if it could be read into the record or something, but if it could just be posted on the website, I'd appreciate that. Otherwise, in kind of summary of the email, one of the main general points that I think is kind of clear to me is that the law requires that the Western Regional Water Commission make the decisions on the conformance review procedures, and I don't think that can be delegated the way that the proposed resolution 5 changes are appearing, without, intruding on the public process and what the NRS clearly says. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Jen, this time I'm going to ask you, is there any other additional public comment on this item?
I have none.
Thank you. Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission once again and entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Solero, I'd recommend to the WRWC the adoption of an amendment to resolution number 5 after holding a public hearing approving the proposed revised facility conformance review procedures.
Got a motion from Commissioner Solero. Do I have a second?
Enlow, second.
Seconded by Commissioner Enlow. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Move on to agenda item number 7. Presentation, discussion, and possible action on the draft update to the cost and financing chapter for the 2021 Regional Water Management Plan. Mr. Wessel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, as you know, we're bringing forward the various updates to the chapter to the Regional Water Management Plan. Commission retained Catherine Hansford of Hansford Economic Consulting to update the cost and finance chapter for the 2021 Regional Water Management Plan update. As you know, the chapter is a high-level analysis of costs associated with the recommended major facility improvements programs identified in the Regional Water Management Plan. Ms. Hansford will provide a report on the progress to date and expected timeframes for the completion of the update of the chapter. This initial presentation of the chapter update today is intended to provide the Commission the opportunity to comment on the proposed chapter revisions. So staff is providing the chapter to you for your review and comment. We are not asking you to adopt this at this time, but giving you, this is our introduction to the chapter, and so we'll give you some time to take a look at it, and we'll bring it back in a future meeting for adoption. So with that, I would turn it over to Ms. Hansford. I believe she's with us today. I saw her there. I know I did.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Very good. Hi, Catherine.
Hi. Okay, thank you for the introduction, Chris. And I'm going to attempt to share my screen. So let me give this a shot and let me know when you see it. Do you see that?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So just building a little bit off of what Chris said, this chapter is still a draft. We still have a little time for making some revisions. Do want to say at the outset of this that not all staff members have yet had the opportunity to look through this in detail. So I do expect there'll be some fine tuning of this, but I think overall it's in the right place. And I'd like to start out too by thanking all of the staff at each of the agencies. I know this is kind of a thorn in the side with me calling and emailing and asking for this information. It's not a high priority on your list of to-dos for the week. And I do appreciate you taking the time and putting the information together in a format that I could work with. So thank you for that. And I do also want to thank Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency staff who produced a map for me very quickly and also produced data for me very quickly. So thank you. I think I have a delay here with my screen. Did it go to the second slide?
Yes.
Good, thank you. All right, so the purpose of the cost and financing chapter, well, really primarily it's to satisfy section 42.7 of the Act. This chapter has been in the plan all along, and this is an update of it. And the way the chapter satisfies that section of the Act is by summarizing the capital improvement project costs for water-related infrastructure over the short term, and that's defined as being the next 5-year period. And it's all water-related facilities. So water, wastewater, reclaim, flood, and stormwater too. The chapter compares the 5-year CIP estimates with previous Regional Water Master Plan 5-year estimates. It describes the population and economic growth trends and how infrastructure needs will respond to changes at a high level. And it considers the impact of the existing asset rehabilitation costs and new infrastructure costs on existing and future users of the infrastructure. This chart is an overview of the total estimated 5-year CIP costs. including the Truckee River Flood Management Authority projects, the total is $821.9 million. And if we exclude the Flood Management Authority projects, it's $767.7 million. The chapter provides tables of the CIP estimates by each provider. I'm not going to go into that level of detail here today, but please do review those tables and the appendices that provide the support for those tables. And please let me know if you see something there that doesn't quite jive with what you thought you gave me. So this graph shows that the infrastructure, or the facility with the greatest cost anticipated over the next 5 years is for sewer, then water, reclaim, flood, and stormwater. And looking between the last 5-year plan and this 5-year period of time, these pie charts show how the spending is shifting a little bit. So in the 2016 Regional Water Management Plan, sewer was about 50% of the anticipated costs, water almost 40%, and the remainder was being made up by the other systems. In the 2021 Regional Water Management Plan, there's a shift here to focus on reclaim. So reclaimed wastewater, how it's disposed of, and so there's an increased cost with reclaim. So a little bit of a shift there. And then also a little bit more on stormwater is anticipated. Looking at just again summary of the total costs and how that's how those costs looked in the 2011 plan, the 2016 plan, and today. This table does exclude the Truckee River Management Flood Management Authority costs, because in 2016 they were a little bit in flux, and we didn't have good costs for them, but we do now. Thank you, Danielle, for providing those. And a couple of things to note. So in total, the anticipated costs for the next 5 years are 84% higher than they were in the 2011 plan, and 48% higher than the 2016 plan. So there's a pretty significant increases. And if you look at where the cost is shifting to, you're seeing a pattern here of costs being funded by developer fees because these projects are benefiting new growth and development. So the chapter does explore a little as to why this is happening. Why is there greater planned spending anticipated? And you know, simply put, it's more infrastructure to maintain as growth has occurred. So that's looking after what you've already got. And then more stringent regulatory requirements to meet. And there's more geographical constraints to meet as the area gets built out. So, and more infrastructure needed to support that new growth as well. Just looking at the number of building permits that have been pulled, this is just residential building permits that have been pulled since 2010. This includes the county, excluding Incline Village, the cities of Reno and Sparks. You can see this upwards trend here. If we look at the labor force, that's increased gradually. It's kept increasing at a higher pace since 2016. What we're seeing in 2020 is a little bit of an anomaly, looking at the employment figures. When, as a result of the pandemic, we saw a big dip in employment, which has rebounded, but the 2020 figures don't show that. So, the growth in employment is continuing too. We just had that dip there in 2020. Okay, then the chapter moves on to describe how these costs might impact both existing customers and future customers. And it's important to know that the chapter doesn't attempt to actually quantify what that impact might be to a customer. It's tricky to do, and it's very detailed work to do. And because we have a lot of different agencies in the region with different rate philosophies, and how to charge. So what it does do, though, is it has a look at what is a typical monthly bill for a home in the Truckee Meadows area. And it looks at it in Reno, Sparks, and incorporated area, and some Valley GIDs area. In the chapter itself, I just have a graph that shows the 2021 figures, but for this presentation, I also put in what a bill looked like in 2016, because I'm seeing some interesting trends with rates just generally in other work they do. And I was overall pretty impressed because the monthly bills have been averaging less than 3% per year in the area. So, for example, for Reno in 2016, a typical monthly bill would have been about $102, and now it's about $111. So the rates have certainly been kept under 3% a year, and I would have expected I would expect to see in the future that will probably go up. As I said, measurement is beyond the scope of this chapter, but I did just put in a couple of interesting points here that I've also been making to some other city councils recently, and why I think that you probably could expect the rates to increase greater than inflation here in the next few years. And so the American Water Works Association released a report, and they reported water rates to increase 5.1% per year, and wastewater rates increased 5.6% per year between 2014 and 2018. Now that's nationwide, but that's higher than 3% and higher than the rate of inflation. And then the National Association of Clean Water Agencies determined the cost of wastewater service more than doubled the rate of inflation of the last 12 months, the 18th consecutive year that increase in charges have outpaced inflation. Then there's a shift to look at what might be the impact on the new users and housing costs for new homes. And this is really encapsulated in Appendix K, which is a technical memorandum. And it was really interesting in talking to the developers in the region as I was developing the assumptions for that piece of the analysis. And they placed a lot of value on this analysis. So they were really very happy to provide information. I got some really good data to perform this work. This memo was included in the 2016 plan too, and I think it's even a little bit more robust this time. And just to summarize that, really the same findings as in 2016, although I would say that it shows all types of housing to be financially feasible today, whereas in 2016, some of them were marginal. But looking specifically on the water side, the water utilities developer fees represent a very small proportion of the total housing costs. They are unlikely to influence the supply of new housing at their current levels. The water fees, the way they're structured, do encourage infill. The sewer fees currently do not. And that's the same finding in 2016. The chapter also does take a look at some longer-term CIP costs for years 6 through 20 through the plan, because it's a 20-year plan. I think there's not much emphasis on this in the chapter because it's understood that it's difficult to create plans that go that far out, especially as the economy is changing so rapidly. But but just a couple of things came out of it. I think that the cost you see in the chapter should be considered a very minimum investment in the new and upgraded infrastructure. Yeah, I already mentioned this, but there's many factors that can affect the cost that make this planning difficult to do. So that was really just a very high-level recap. To complete this chapter, there are portions of data and corresponding text that may be updated after each of the agencies has had the opportunity to really review this thoroughly and may provide additional information. Plus, I'll be making any changes based on your feedback and input today. But there is sufficient time to make these revisions before this chapter is accepted and adopted by the board as part of the plan. So that's my presentation. I'll take any questions.
Catherine, thank you very much. Do we have questions or comments from the commission? All right, hearing none, I'll take public comment. Mr. DiMartini, do you wish to comment on this item?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. My comment on this really relates to the projection of the cost in the near future that the customers may experience due to changes in how the water process is being treated and how much that will actually cost the customers. So that's with regards to the Class A plus water, the potable or non-potable reuse, whatever it might be, what the cost of that is to each and every customer in the future, being that that would be part of this plan, potentially. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. DiMartini. Jen, do we have any other public comment with regard to agenda item 7?
I have none.
Thank you. I'll bring it back to the commission. Any further comment? Well, hearing and seeing none, I will ask for a motion.
Move to accept the report. Zimmerman.
Second, Flansburgh.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Catherine, thank you. It was good to see you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 8, presentation, discussion, and possible action on the draft update. The Stormwater Watershed-based water quality planning chapter of the 2021 plan. Mr. Wessel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Commission retained NCE Consulting through an interlocal with City of Reno to help update the Stormwater water-based water quality and planning chapter as part of the 2021 update. As you recall, this is a new standalone chapter, and as such, it's going to have it's having a new rewrite, if you will. And Teresa Jones, who's Associate Engineer of City of Reno and Stormwater Program Coordinator, is here to provide a report on the progress of the chapter and the update and its expected timeframes for its completion. Again, this is an initial presentation of this chapter and is intended to provide you, Commission, an opportunity to comment, propose any chapter revisions. We're not looking for this draft of the review. This is a draft for your review and comment. We're really just looking for an acceptance of this report today and give you a chance to take a look at this chapter for over the next couple of meetings, and then we'll bring it back for maybe a formal final draft adoption. So with that, I'll turn it over to Teresa. I believe you're with us, Teresa.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. Very good. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much. For the record, Teresa Jones, City Reno Public Works and coordinator for the Truckee Meadows Stormwater Committee. As Chris said, I'm here to introduce the new Chapter 5, which is Section 4.5 of the old Regional Water Management Plan, was taken out and placed in its own chapter, Stormwater and Watershed-based water quality planning. I don't have a presentation, and I was just going to kind of go through where we are and take any questions or concerns you guys may have, the commissioners may have regarding our changes to the chapter so far. The chapter hasn't been meticulously reviewed for common grammatical or punctuation errors and formatting, but we did want to get it to you to show our thought process behind the update. It will go before the committee this May on May 28th. The committee will have a chance to review and comment. So the majority of the text has been kept intact, albeit it's been reorganized in a number of instances, and we've provided updates to timelines, permits, recent reports and projects where needed. The reason why we modified the language and reorganized the subsection, we felt that the flow of the chapter and the text was a bit clunky. A number of authors have contributed to the chapter with different writing styles, and so we tried to improve the overall continuity and streamline the information in the chapter. We've deleted some things, nothing major. For instance, we deleted a section on non-point education for municipal officials. This program no longer exists. The information that this program developed, we still distribute in our public outreach, but the program itself with the University Cooperative Extension no longer exists. We modified some section chapters and combined them with others. For instance, the land use planning section has been renamed and combined with the post-construction new development and significant redevelopment section to match the language and the program elements outlined in the MS4 permit. Another example of a section that we deleted was Tumwa Watershed Academy. The link to this was broken, and we asked some staff members over at Tumwa if this program existed, and as far as we could tell, we didn't think it existed. So those are some of the items that we deleted. The major additions to the chapter is the introduction, the purpose of the chapter with summaries from the old plan, understanding that it's important to keep the history of how stormwater, water quality planning has progressed throughout the decades, and summarizing the new update for the 21-2040 plan. So there's various updates throughout, and I can take you through those or answer any questions. And then the major section that has been added is on page 42 and 52 of the chapter. And this talks about the just renewed outreach and collaboration and stakeholder involvement with the local agencies, the state agencies, the nonprofits. I've seen a really positive change in the collaboration between the entities since I've worked at the city of Reno. And so that's about 10 pages. We've noted the integrated source water protection program in there, and the new updated watershed management plan for tributaries to the Truckee River. So that is all I want to say about the chapter, and I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Do we have any questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I'd just make a comment with regards to this chapter. I know Teresa and I worked on this, and because we split this chapter out from chapter 4, you know, initially when we created the plan, the initial plan, we were very careful to follow the required outlines outlined in the Regional Water Management or the Western Regional Water Commission Act. And I just wanted to point out that Teresa and I did have a conversation about this, and that this chapter, as it's presented, does in fact touch all the required, or at least addresses all the required elements that are identified in the Act. So with the additions that Teresa has added to, basically complement the fact of what we've been doing in terms of stormwater in the community, all those elements that were required have been addressed. So I would just leave that as a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Wessel. Any comments from the commission?
I would just state that I appreciate having the public education, having the watershed management, and updates that include the good work that the Stormwater Committee has been working on. So thank you, Teresa, for those efforts and for all of the regional partners and getting that work together.
Thank you, John.
All right, any other comments? I'll look to a motion to accept this report today.
Move to accept.
Do I have a second, please?
I'll second that, Solero.
We've got a motion by Mr. Flansburgh, second by Mr. Solero. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Teresa, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We'll move on to item number 9, presentation, discussion, and possible action on the draft update to the population forecast and projections of water demand, peak day requirements, and wastewater flow chapter for our 2021 plan. Mr. Wessel. Chris, I think you're muted.
Sorry, I'm gonna get caught every time.
We're gonna have to start a mute jar.
I know. So yeah, this is the population forecast projections chapter. This one, we get a lot of help. Well, both Mr. Smitherman has often led this charge in the past with this chapter, and along with Jeremy's or TMRPA in general, but in particular this time we're working with Jeremy Smith and his group to help us with these projections. Your staff report outlines the elements in the chapter which are undergoing revision. Jim is here to discuss the progress to date regarding the updates to the chapter. Again, this is an initial, this is basically an initial introduction of this chapter for you to look at. We're looking to have you review and comment on it. No action is required today. We're looking just for an acceptance for you to accept the report. Just as a reminder on any of these chapters that we're talking about, if you have comments or you want to make significant comments, please let me know. I'll be glad to send you a Word document. Obviously can't post that way, but be happy to do it. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Hello again, commissioners. Jim Smitherman for the record. This chapter on population forecast and projections of water demand, peak day requirements, and wastewater flow. It's essentially a work in progress updating the chapter that was presented in the 2016 Regional Water Plan. The chapter is broken down into 3 main parts. The first part is population forecast in comparison with sustainable water resources identified in the plan. The second part is 20-year water demand and wastewater flow projections, which we are in progress on. And then the third part is the regional wastewater balance. We call it a map. It's more of a diagram or a schematic of water distribution and wastewater treatment plant capacity and effluent management capacity throughout the region. You probably remember what that schematic looks like. And then some analysis and conclusions there. We have yet to start working on that third section, but just starting you out from the very beginning, the revisions to section 6.1, which is the consensus forecast population and the comparison with the sustainable water resources, the revisions are pretty straightforward. So we brought forward the projections in the 2020 consensus forecast for population. So that has our population in 2040 at approximately 569,385 persons. So that's a 92,000 person increase from the 2020 population estimate, the year 2020 population estimate, so our current population. Then you remember we compare that with sustainable water resources in the regional water plan, and then forward a recommendation to the Western Regional Water Commission for their determinations to whether or not that population can be served by the sustainable water resources. That took place last August, I believe, and so we just reflect the recommendation and the finding of the Western Regional Water Commission in that section. Moving on to section 2, water demand and peak flow requirements. I just had TUMWA review their methodology and confirmed to me that the methodology that they used in the current water resource plan is essentially the same as was used in 2016. So the next step will be to get updated numbers for the peak day requirements and the water demand projections for Sean Stoddard there at TUMWA does an estimate of the entire county water demand projection, and then he breaks out TUMWA's service area water demand for me as well. So we get a TUMWA demand for 2040, and I think we had to break it out in 5-year increments last plan, and then for non-TUMWA, or essentially the rest of the county, and I need to update those tables with those numbers. And then moving on to the work that we've worked most hardest on, I guess, in the just prior months, have been the wastewater flow projections. And so Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency has provided wastewater flow projections for the TMSA, Truckee Meadows Service Area, through 2050. So that 2050 is beyond the horizon for this plan. So I plan to use just the projections from 2020 to 2040 to stay within the 20-year planning horizon of the plan. But just know that the projections through 2050 are available. Similar to 5 years ago, the Regional Planning Agency used a consensus forecast and their development suitability model to predict growth at the parcel level. And from that, they derived wastewater flow projections using winter water use coefficients that were provided by TUMWA. And that winter water use is the best surrogate we have for indoor water use, or water that would be sewered and received by the wastewater treatment facilities. And then, so each of the, let's see. Okay, and those coefficients are based on meter data, excuse me. To validate the projections, TMRPA was provided wastewater flow data from each of the 5 regional water reclamation facilities, and then those data were averaged over 5 years. So the years were 2016 through 2020, and then compared to their calculated or modeled flows for the same period. The table shows that the model predicts fairly accurately, actually very accurately, for the entire region over the averaged 5-year period. But you can see that flows during 2017 and 2019 were higher than predicted because those were wet years. And so we expect to see a little bit more water in the wastewater collection systems during those years. But then the overall prediction, I think, was very close. They were within 101%, I think, of what the observed flows were overall. If you drill down and look at the predictions facility by facility, they're not quite that accurate. So we may do a little bit more review on those figures before we bring you a kind of a finalized version. The regional effluent planning group has been reviewing these. The team has been reviewing, and I expect them to provide comments on the individual wastewater flow by reclamation facility numbers, and we can review those with TMRPA. The grand total lines in figures 6.5 and 6.6 show that the model, let's see, I pretty much said that, underpredicted 2017 to 2019, but the grand total is really almost dead on. So we could review some of those numbers in detail if you want to, but I realize that this is your first look at this draft chapter. And so really the intent of the item today is to just give you the chapter and give you the chance to review it and provide some feedback. I expect that this will probably be a couple of months away from actually bringing you a complete revision to the chapter. The last section, section 6.3, water balance model or water balance diagram. I just made a couple of minor revisions to that section as I could without the final water demand projections and the final wastewater flow projections by area. But the intent of that exercise is to show by wastewater service area where there are excesses and deficits in treatment capacity and effluent management capacity. We are very hopeful that the effluent planning guidance document that is underway and set to be finalized within the next couple of months will inform this section significantly. And so we know from the work that we've done so far that each of the wastewater treatment facilities has a path forward for expansion and alternatives identified for effluent management. And so we really should not show any deficits in effluent management in any of the service areas through 2040. And then, of course, the expansion plans are in place as well, either planned for or underway, so that I don't expect there to be any deficits on the wastewater side of the equation. As far as water supply, we'll probably be in the same boat that we were in 2016. So if we were to build out all of the land uses according to the consensus forecast, we may show that there is a water supply deficit locally, but that overall region-wide water supply should exist. It would just be a matter of where in the sub areas where there might be a deficit. And then rounding out that section, we draw some conclusions and state those. Those conclusions roll forward into the final chapter of the plan, which are the where are the major issues, what needs to be done, and then setting out a schedule for addressing those issues. So without taking up any more of your time, I would turn it back to you, either Chris or Mr. Chairman, for questions, comments. I would like to note that Jeremy Smith is on the call today. So if there are methodology questions about the wastewater projections, that sort of thing, he's made himself available to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I'll bring it back to the commission for questions. Comments? Mr. John, thank you.
Sorry. I just had a question for Chris. I mean, with these couple of chapters, I mean, if you could just give us a more definitive schedule on when you're looking to have these reviewed and comments back by, that would help.
Yeah, John, that's good comment. Really the idea behind this was to give you as the commissioners the opportunity to take what time you feel you need. And I don't know that I need to dictate it so much as I need to make sure that you're satisfied with it. It's your plan. So I guess my feeling is if you don't get back to me within a couple of meetings, my expectation is that you probably don't have a lot of comments or review. And frankly, I haven't had a request for any of the chapters in Word format, and I haven't received any comments, so I'm not expecting any so far for any of the chapters we've reviewed to date. So I guess I kind of leave it up to you, but I'm not, I'd like to see a lot of these get done by July, to be honest with you. That's kind of where my schedule's got June and July to finish up most of these. The only things we have outstanding after that will be the wastewater chapter and the issues and actions chapter and also the flood chapter. I know that the flood authority is working on had made some major changes here that we couldn't get incorporated in time for this meeting. But those will be the last 3 chapters I think we have to look at, and that's going to push us down the road a little bit. So that would be my comment on that. I don't know.
Chris, you can go ahead and send me this chapter in Word format, and I'll distribute it to Tumwa. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, any additional comments or questions? Mr. DiMartini, do you have comments on this item?
I do not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. With that, Jen, any other public comment out in Zoom land?
I have none.
Thank you. All right, I'll bring it back to the commission. I'll entertain a motion to accept.
Whitmer, so moved.
Thank you, Mike. Do I have a second?
Solero, I'll second.
Thank you, Dave. Got a motion by Commissioner Whitmer, a second by Commissioner Solero. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Move on to item number 10, report, discussion, and possible action on comments received on the draft update to the regional water planning policies and criteria chapter for the 21 plan. Chris. Mr. Wessel, you're muted again.
I swear to God, there's going to be a far side about Zoom muting.
I think if we start the mute jar, you're going to be buying lunch for everybody here.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so staff presented the preliminary review of the policy and criteria chapter to the commission for review and comment at our last meeting. To date, I have not received any comments on that with regards to any desires for changes or even a request for the chapter in a Word format. So I'm not expecting any additional comments at this time. As you know, seeing as that you've currently made a recommendation for a revision of Resolution 5, the conformance review procedures are a part of this chapter and will be incorporated upon approval by the Western Regional Water Commission, which I'm anticipating happening at the May 20th budget meeting. We're looking at since we're having a public hearing at that time, we're going to kind of continue it on, and this resolution for the conformance review has to be done at a public hearing. So at any rate, so I guess it's up for the commission to decide whether you feel that this chapter is ready to be kind of put in a final draft mode, and then and we can and kind of put this one on the shelf. And as you know, all the chapters, any of them, even if they've been approved in a final draft mode, will be available for comment up until the time that we make final recommendation to the Western Regional. So with that in mind, I turn it over to you, Mr. Chair, as to what you want to do.
Thank you, Mr. Wessel. Any comments?
Sorry, Enlow again. Chris, Tumwa reviewed this pretty thoroughly already, right? So from our perspective, I think we're good with it, but I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and I think that when we review this chapter, the majority of text that needed to be updated and revised was relevant to the water resource plan from Tumwa. So those changes have been incorporated, and those were presented to you as part of this plan update.
All right, any other comments?
Yeah, I would just comment that based on the item we had earlier today on the source water, there may be some general comment to want to place in this chapter in regard to work that we're looking to go forward with. Obviously, that would take the Western Region Water Commission action for approval, but that just might make a minor change in here, Chris.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Any further comment? All right, hearing none and seeing none, Mr. DiMartini, would you like to make public comment on this agenda item?
Yes, I would. Just a brief one. It looks like the issue of water quality maybe needs to be expanded on a little bit in the end with regards to distribution of water to different areas such as the North Valleys. It's not only a valley may be deficient on quantity, but it doesn't mean that bringing in water that has too much TDS would be okay. So the quality needs to be looked at as well, and how these valleys may sustain themselves, except with regards to too much water, too little water, quality, TDS, and those type of things, as well as the cost and the public involvement. Right now, it's my belief that 90% of the public has no idea what's going on here. I don't know whose fault that is, but I think that's maybe like the statistics are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. DeMartini. Jen, do we have any other public comment out in Zoom land?
I have none.
Thank you. All right, hearing no further public comment, I will entertain a motion to, I heard a couple of things here we can either accept as presented today. Chris did put out there that are we at a point where we can call this draft a final? I think Mr. Flansburgh mentioned it could be subject to slight revision after the WRWC. So does anyone have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the draft subject to further comment and revision.
Thank you, Commissioner Howe. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Flansburgh. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Motion carried. All right, we'll move on to, where are we? Agenda item number 12. No, I'm sorry, we're on agenda item number 11. That's a long agenda today, Chris. You got me all sideways.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Status and discussion regarding chapters and schedule related to the drafting and presentation of the plan. Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Well, yeah, it is a long agenda today, and we can expect a few more of these until we get through the plan. I included the latest update of the schedule. I can already tell you it's probably going to creep more than it is already, but I don't have any way of evaluating that at this time. It's pretty much the same schedule I gave you last time. We should be looking to see, hopefully maybe in June, maybe we can get the wastewater chapter in, present that to you, the flood management chapter, and possibly the issues and actions chapter is what we'd be looking to bring to you next month. And of course, we can always we'll review some existing chapters that we've already presented to you and see if we can get any more of these off our slate. But that's really all I have. There's not a lot of change in the schedule this time. I'll probably know more by the end of next month.
Thank you, Mr. Wessel. Any questions, comments from the commission? All right, Mr. Wessel, I have a comment. I think as we go into subsequent meetings and these chapters keep reappearing, I'd like to see in the agenda item your recommendation whether the commission should be approving on the day or leaving it open for future comment. I think we're going to need a little push here, so I'm gonna leave it to you when you're satisfied. Identify to us if you've received any comments from anybody, if they've been addressed, and if not, give us a push to approve it, please.
Absolutely, be more than happy to do that.
Thank you. All right, any other comments from the commission? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item 12, the program manager's report. Mr. Wessel.
Yeah, there's attached to your packet is our current project status. Things are going on pretty well, pretty much as expected. Keeping in mind, some of the things are at 0% complete. That's because they're billed at the end of the year. Some are billed quarterly and some are billed monthly. So just keep that in mind. Outside of that, and then the financial report shows that there's nothing red on there, so that's good. So we're in good shape, I think, on that one. So, not a whole lot to report, but if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions from the commission today? Any comments? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 13. Discussion regarding location and possible agenda items for the upcoming Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission meeting and direction to staff. And I think with Directive 44, we're going to be back in chambers as of June 1st. Chris, is that correct?
Yeah, well, I might defer to Mr. Solero, Commissioner Solero, for that commentary. I mean, it's his chambers, so I don't know. Dave, maybe you could update us on that.
Sure, I'll just give a quick shot. Starting June 1st, Washoe County Chambers, per Directive 44, I believe, of the governor, our chambers will be open for the public. Now the question becomes whether this board wants to do a combination of in-person meeting with Zoom platform. Chris and I can certainly talk through that and what that means. I know that we've all become accustomed to the convenience of being able to be in lots of different places at the same time and not necessarily having to come to a chambers. And some people still may not be as comfortable as others, being in a chambers with others. So I think there's some work to be done there, but certainly the Washoe County Commission chambers will be open and we will have to provide a location for in-person public comment as well per the open meeting law. So chambers will be open, they'll be available, and we'll kind of have to work through, I think, with Chris on kind of really what the operation actually looks like for these meetings. So.
Great. Well, yeah, that sounds great. And that works. I guess that's easy enough. We've done it before. So I guess it's just a combined meeting might get a little weird, but okay, we'll give that a shot. One thing I would like to ask though, and I have to tell you one of the best things about this round of the plan update, and I know you've probably seen your packet, it's a couple of 100 pages long. I think we just saved a couple of old growth forests just by doing this all electronically. And I really hope that we can continue that, because I don't want to be printing these chapters out because they're just huge. And there's really, at this point in time, it's 2021, we should really keep with the digital age. So if that's okay with everybody, I would like to keep submitting these all electronically and not have to print any of this out. So outside of that, I think things coming up. So our next meeting, like I said, we had chapters for wastewater chapter, the flood chapter, and the issues and actions chapter. Hopefully we can introduce you to those. We'll revisit hopefully chapters on stormwater, population forecasting, and the cost and finance chapters, see where we are on those. If we're far enough along, maybe we can get some approvals to final those out. Maybe have a few projects. I haven't got any in the queue at the moment, but I suspect they're gonna start creeping out of the woodworks here pretty quickly. And just as a reminder for those of you where I'm on the last of a 3-part series with the Western Regional Water Commission on May 19th. I'm going to provide them we're going to provide like a closed basin presentation. So just to kind of get them up to speed on what closed basins are, and they understand when we ask for money for closed basins, they know what we're talking about. And then possibly we'll have some project approvals on that agenda. And then of course, May 20th, the following day is budget day, right? Everybody, I think the flood, Western Regional, and TUMWA will all be on that day, back-to-back meetings in the morning. So that's what you have to look forward to. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Any comments or questions from the commission regarding agenda item 13? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item 14, commissioner comments. Anyone have general comments for the commission today? I've got one, and I'll be looking forward to chairing a meeting that's not on Zoom.
Yeah.
It's been fun, but I'm done.
Yeah.
Any other comments? All right, hearing none. Mr. Wessel, any staff comments today?
None from me, thanks.
Thank you, sir. We'll go back to item 16 or go on to item 16, which is public comment. Jen, do we have any public comment in the general public comment session? Mr. DiMartini, do you wish to make comment?
No, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jen, anyone else out there?
I have none.
Thank you. Seeing no public comment, we are adjourned. See you guys next month.